As Jesse said, this track is now talking about real money gaming. And specifically, this one's called Real Money Gaming, Bane, or Savior. So obviously, I'm talking real money gaming. In other words, if you don't know, that's wagering, betting, gambling, playing games for real money. And for most of the people, those words conjure up images of Las Vegas, of casinos, poker, blackjack tables, slots. But specifically, I'm talking about the intersection of gambling and video games. iGaming, online gambling. Now, there are a lot of opinions about online gambling in general, and these opinions can be so strongly held that a polite discussion of the topic can be a bit challenging. But that's what we're going to do. Now, I am going to talk about the pros and cons of real money gaming from the perspective of a video game developer. So first off, who am I and why do I have anything to say about this topic? As Jesse said, my name is Jamison SELBY. I run the games team at B-Spot in Los Angeles. We're a real money mobile game network. We let game developers tie the monetization and integrate real money play into their games. I first got involved with real money games by happenstance many years ago. I was working in the game show industry in television in Los Angeles. And a game company, location-based company, hooked up with Endemol, and they decided they wanted to take Deal or No Deal to Las Vegas as a pay-to-play stage show, and I ended up tapped to design the concept and the gameplay of that experience. And we turned the single-player TV show into a multiplayer, full-audience stage show where everybody paid to play and had a chance to go on stage. The show never went live in Vegas, but it is still running on cruise ships to this day. After that, we went on to do live interactive poker shows, things like The Real Deal at the Venetian in Los Angeles. We had the entire roster of the world champions of poker playing along on stage, playing against the audience in real time. I've done interactive pay-to-play movie trivia shows around the country, and electronic bingo around the UK, Ireland, and Canada. So I've done a lot of different things in this world, and I've done it all from the perspective of a video game designer. That's who I am. So off the bat, I'm going to say that this is an opinion piece. And those opinions are mine. They are not my company's. They are not any organization or anybody else's here. They're my opinions. So if you think I'm full of it, that's on me. Feel free to let me know. So why this talk? Why this topic? And this topic and this talk is because of the boogeyman. I will explain. So last year I was down at yet another industry conference. They seem to happen every other day now. And I was actually not there to talk about gambling. I was actually speaking on distributed development, running teams around the world. But the conference was focused on leadership, and the keynote speaker gave this fantastic talk. It was actually awesome. And I was really inspired by the talk. I was like, here's this smart, brawny, bright, funny guy. Didn't know him personally, but I got to hook up with him after his talk. And we hung out for a while, had a great conversation, and I was like, wow, this is a really inspiring guy. And at the time, I was staffing a sort of design strike team with our company to tackle a bunch of creative issues focused on the real money industry. So I thought, oh my God, this would be a perfect guy to be involved with that. So I started talking to him about it, and I told him very little about what we were doing, and I mentioned the words real money gaming. And just instantly, a dark cloud fell down behind his eyes, and he said, gambling. I said, yeah. He's like, I don't want anything to do with that. Not at all. That doesn't interest me in the slightest. And the conversation ended, and I was like, wow, that sucked. He was a guy who I admire, who I look up to, who I was having a really good conversation with, and instantly, with the words real money gaming, he just suddenly looked at me with this veil of judgment as if I was somehow something else, something other. I was no longer a game developer. I was one of them. I was the boogeyman. So, was he right? We're all talking opinions. Am I the boogeyman? Is real money gaming, from the video game industry's perspective, the boogeyman? Is it helpful or is it harmful to our industry? And for overly dramatic sounding conference title purposes, I went with real money gaming, Bane, or Savior. Come back. There we go. So we'll hit the positive section first because we're not going to stay here too long. There are many talks in this conference, Lose, and many others that are going to hit specific metrics and potentials of the U.S. and worldwide online gambling market. I'm just going to touch on it briefly. If you want to have a conversation about it, feel free to hit me up afterwards and we can talk in detail. The primary reason that we're having this talk and that most developers want to talk about real money gaming at all is financial. There are many other good reasons, honestly. Increased engagement for players, vast market differentiation, but we'll stick talking about the money as to why this is a conversation to have at all. So this 336 versus 106, this was actually Super Data's estimate for the end of the year 2013, comparing the cost per install in mobile games to the average revenue per paying user. In the holiday season, it jumped up for a bit to $7 or $8 per CPI. And since then, the numbers have stabilized and come down a bit. But the trend holds, even though the numbers vary a bit depending on what journal you're reading. Keeping your ARPU above your CPI is a challenge, and it is not getting any easier. And then there's this lovely number, the 0.01%. This comes from the research from Gartner. And they predict that through 2018, less than 0.01% of commercial mobile apps, which includes games, will be considered a financial success by their developers. So, even in an industry well-versed in competition, 0.01% is a bitter pill to swallow. Here's another number, $35.5 billion. And this is the H2 Gambling Capital's estimated revenue worldwide in the online gambling market this year, most of which is coming from Europe because the U.S. market is just getting started. That number is more than half the size of the entire U.S. casino and tribal gambling industry, which according to Ribben Brown, topped out at $66.3 billion last year. Again, the estimates are going to vary a little bit. I've seen estimates for the next few years ranging from $29 to $42 billion per year for online gambling worldwide. But every single one of them is a big number. And that series of numbers, the 336 versus 106, 0.01, 35.5 billion, paint the general picture as to why this track exists, why we're having this conversation in the first place. Financial potential in real money game, financial peril in the mobile game industry. There are many debates as to how it's going to play out, but that is what's driving the discussion. That is the positive side, the savior side. 35.5 billion reasons to have this conversation. Okay, that's done with the math. We're now going to move into the Bane chapter, and now we're talking about the fun stuff. They're very bad, and they're very ugly. So debating the pros and the cons of integrating real money gaming with video games can be somewhat challenging, brings out a lot of deep-seated feelings. I encourage you to Google the topic. You can watch some lovely fiery debates and people screaming at each other on YouTube. It's quite fun. We are only going to scratch the surface of this topic, obviously, but I would encourage, whenever you're having these conversations or watching this stuff online, goal is to try and have a discussion rather than screaming at each other in a sort of generalized direction of volume. So, the term gambling, as Lou went into, covers a vast, vast range of topics. Britannica describes it as betting or staking something of value on the outcome of a game or event. For the purposes of this talk, I am specifically talking about online gaming, iGaming, internet gaming. So, first in the Bane column are the overall arguments in the U.S. market against iGaming in general. So, right now in the U.S. there is a very loud debate going on this topic, and one of the richest men in the world, billionaire Sheldon Adelson, has launched a full-on campaign against iGaming in the U.S. And for today, I will leave aside the intellectual quandary of a legendary casino mogul whose casino holdings have made him the 10th richest man in the world, striking out against online gambling. Some might perceive a stunning level of hypocrisy in that, but we will dodge that for now. These are the primary con arguments raised by the Adelson-backed Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. Each one of these topics could easily dominate an entire conference, but we're going to hit them quickly. So, threats to the public interest. It's a very 1920s sounding statement, conjures up Eliot Ness and Al Capone. The argument basically says that land-based casinos are licensed and regulated, and therefore they can protect the public from the variety of social ills that can be associated with gambling. And internet gambling cannot possibly be licensed or regulated in the same manner. Therefore, it is dangerous and must be banned. However, many of the players moving into the online gambling arena are existing land-based operators who hold those very licenses and are legal and are regulated, such as Caesars, which now operates CaesarsCasino.com, which is an online casino in New Jersey right now, today, licensed and regulated heavily by the state of New Jersey. In 2011, for those of you who may know the poker industry, it was an event we called Black Friday. The U.S. government decided that online poker was illegal, and they shut it down. And they crushed the legal operations in the U.S. And operators who wished to stay on the right side of the law shut their doors to U.S. players and moved their operations offshore. But not everybody shut their doors to U.S. players, because it turns out that not everybody really cares about obeying the law. Only the people who wish to obey the law obeyed the ban. Everybody else moved offshore and still accepts U.S. players to this day to the tunes of billions of dollars per year. So, regulated, licensed market or unregulated black market? Which one is more of a threat to the public interest? Underage gambling. This is a good one, brings up a lot of emotions, and it argues that it's nearly impossible to prevent minors from gambling online. It says you cannot prevent adults from allowing minors to play on their parents' accounts. And that is true. You cannot prevent it. You also can't prevent adults from buying alcohol for minors or giving a 10-year-old the keys to their car. But it is illegal, and it can be punished and de-incentivized. And of course, it's impossible for minors to enter a land-based casino and gamble illegally. That has never happened in the history of time, except the 6 or 7 times in the last couple of years it's happened to Sheldon himself on his own properties, for which he's been fined over $200,000. There's an entire category of companies, some of them here, who are dedicated to online age gating and age verification. Are they 100% perfect? Doubtful. Could a talented hacker with limitless time and resources break through their walls? Possibly. But that is not the argument. That is not the case this argument is making. So kids are playing online illegally right now in offshore casinos. So again, legal and regulated or black market? Which one is safer for the kids? Criminal enterprises. And this is a very scary one. Bad guys like gambling and will use the unregulated internet markets to make money and abuse players, blackmail, money laundering, fraud, identity theft, bribery, scary buzzwords galore. The problem here is that this is happening now, right now. It's never stopped. The illegal operators have absolutely no oversight and are run by criminal enterprises. So, the lack of a regulated internet gambling market leaves the field of play to those who would break the law at will. And that was that slide. There we go. Catching up. After this comes the big one, international terrorism, the scariest one of all. Terrorists will use online gambling to make money, launder it, move it around for nefarious purposes, and they will use online gambling to fund attacks against U.S. interests. It's a very emotionally powerful argument, and it's scary as hell. But, again, the problem is that nothing stops this from happening right now. They could literally open their own offshore casino, take billions of dollars from U.S. players, and do whatever they want with it, and there is absolutely no governmental oversight whatsoever. So, either we have a legal, regulated market that offers far more transparency and security, or we have offshore casinos with no oversight whatsoever. So you've got a choice between online gambling that answers to the regulators, the U.S. Treasury and the IRS and the FBI, or one that answers to no one. And lastly, it's a job killer. So despite lacking any direct evidence whatsoever, and this one stirs up a lot of emotion too. Over 300,000 Americans are directly employed by the land-based casino operation, and there are millions who work in support fields from restaurants to taxis that all depend upon the casino industry for their livelihood. The con argument states that if online gaming proliferates around the U.S., these jobs will be crushed, these people will be out of work, and their jobs will be lost forever. On the other side, the online gambling proponents will say that what this will actually do is bring a massive influx of new players into the industry and actually increase land-based casino players and add jobs overall. There's no direct evidence either way. How it plays out remains to be seen. So those were the general arguments against online gambling in the U.S. I want to talk about video games specifically. So the general con arguments come into play here as well. But the primary con statements that I've heard in conversations over again in conferences and elsewhere with friends has to do with the players. And it's really about real money gaming abusing the players. Does real money gaming abuse the players? We're going to go fast here. Are we taking advantage of them? Now, there seems to be a perception of otherness, of gambling sneaking in and staining the pristine experience of pure play. And I would agree. If we're talking about an art game that totally eschews commercialization at all, fine. But if you're leveraging a freemium economy or advertising, do in-app purchases protect players? Does meticulously designing paywalls that block players' access past level 10 unless they pay up protect players? Does making the grind just painful enough to encourage conversion at an acceptable rate protect players? Do underage players ever make questionable in-app purchases? So what if you could simply build the best possible player experience and the monetization went hand in hand with that? Would that be in the player's interest? And what about advertising? Do you love it? Did you join the industry to make a living creating interactive billboards for advertisers? Do players love advertising? Do they make your games better? Or is it a necessary evil that you simply can't survive without? So what if you could? Would that be worse for players? Regulation. It's another big fear that a lot of people have. Will the entry of real money gaming into this space drive regulation of the social casino and industry as a whole? Possibly. It might. Of course, that argument's being made since the coin-op days about regulating the industry, and it hasn't happened yet. It's extremely hard to do, but it absolutely could happen. So I'm going to drive through this very fast because we were almost out of time. But basically, getting to the heart of the matter, the key difference between gambling and gaming comes down to one thing: prize. Consideration and chance are found in gaming all over the place, as well as gambling. So the real thing that makes us different is prize. So what is it about prize, about the something of value that you can win? What is it about the possibility of a prize that spurs all of this discussion? As long as the player can only pay in, everything is good. But as soon as they can take it out, there's something bad. The stakes are literally raised. Everything hinges on this one element. And I don't accept that the prize is inherently bad. In every other avenue of our lives, the prize is honored. But in gambling, it's won, not earned. And somehow that taints the discussion. So does the act of winning the prize based on chance make it somehow wrong? Pervasive tone I've heard among some people is that, yeah, there's something wicked, there's something evil about gambling. It's the boogeyman. And I disagree. Quickly. Back to George from the beginning, the founder of our country. So, just for fun, you may not know that our country was founded on gambling. The Continental Army was funded via a lottery system. Real money gaming, gambling, funded the army that won the Revolutionary War. This was the ticket that Alexander Hamilton created and sold to fund the Continental Army. So gambling and real money play has been around since the very beginning of this country, and for good or bad, it is woven into the fabric of this nation, literally. The last thing I'll leave you guys with is that real money gaming, ultimately and finally, is a tool. It can be an incredibly powerful tool, a $35.5 billion tool. And like any tool, it can be misused. So ultimately, the good or bad of real money gaming, bane or savior, depends on you. Use it for good, use it for ill. Choose wisely. These are some of the references that I made in this article and this talk. They'll be online when the slides go on. You can find them there. That's me. Thanks a lot.